I stole $50,000 from the love of my life for another man, and that other man sold me for less. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm not looking for forgiveness or for you to insult me. Maybe I just need to get it out of me because the guilt won't let me sleep anymore, and because I know what I lost isn't coming back. My ex-fiancé Sebastian was good. Not typically good, he was really good. Hard-working, patient, with an almost exaggerated sense of commitment. When I told him I wanted to open a coffee shop with a space for local artists, he listened as if I were talking about a revolution. He told me we'd do it together, that he'd put up the money, that he trusted me, and he did. He put up 90% of the investment. It was money he'd inherited and saved for years. I had the idea, the plan, the concept, and he, without hesitation, backed it. We opened in a quiet neighborhood with recycled wood tables and fair trade coffee. It wasn't what I dreamed of yet, but it was a beautiful start. At first, everything was going well, but over time he started to change, or I started to see him differently. He was so focused on numbers, suppliers, repairs, accounts. Everything was about keeping the business afloat, not overspending. He'd stay late checking inventory. I, on the other hand, wanted to expand promotions, events, social media, collaborations. I dreamed of franchising. He said it was too soon, and I started to feel ignored. Invisible. My friends noticed. "He seems like your boss, not your partner," Camila would say. She was more direct. She always was. "You have a creative mind, but he's pigeonholing you into the domestic." One afternoon, Camila introduced me to Mauro, an entrepreneur, owner of an expanding coffee shop chain. He had that air of a confident guy who walks as if he knows something you don't. At first, I thought it was a casual meeting, but a 1-hour chat was enough to start messing with my head. Mauro talked to me as if he understood my vision better than I did. "What you're proposing isn't just a business, it's a brand," he told me. "With your idea and my experience, we could do something huge." He offered me free consulting, contacts. He sent me digital books on marketing and scaling. He'd text me on WhatsApp every night. At first, it was just messages about business, then more personal. And yes, I started to feel it. Attention, desire, validation, everything I no longer felt with Sebastian. I never wanted to cheat on anyone. I swear I didn't. But when you're starving for attention, even crumbs seem like feasts. And Mauro gave me a daily feast. "Haven't you realized you're carrying a dream without wings?" he told me once. "You're with someone who loves your idea, but doesn't know how to fly with you." I hated him for that phrase, because it was true. I started being absent from the shop. Lame excuses, meetings with suppliers, online courses. Sebastian didn't suspect a thing. Oh, yes, but he didn't say anything. He continued with his numbers, his obsession with efficiency. I saw him smile less, but I also saw him continue to trust me, and that broke me more than I can explain. One night, he made me dinner. Candles, pasta, my favorite wine. He gave me a notebook with our logo engraved on it and a note. "This is just beginning. Thanks for dreaming with me." I locked myself in the bathroom and cried like a little girl. I wanted to stop everything. Block Mauro, go back. But that same night Mauro called me. He told me about an opportunity in another city. A vacant space. Possible investors. He told me that if I really wanted to fly, it was now or never. And that word resonated with me. Never. The idea was planted there, small, dangerous, like a spark. What if I took part of the investment and moved it to the new project? Just a little. Just what was necessary to start something of my own, something big. I'd return it later. I'd explain to him later. Later, that word was my refuge for weeks. I'll make it up to him later. I'll tell him later. I'll fix it later. But the problem with later is that it always arrives, and when it does, it's crueler than we imagine. The following days were a kind of emotional fog. I met with Mauro in secret. We planned. He talked about brand names, minimalist decoration, real investors. He painted a life of status, press, interviews, expansion. And I felt powerful for the first time in a long time. Meanwhile, Sebastian kept the ship afloat. He worked double shifts, fixed the coffee machine when it broke down, haggled with suppliers, Not because he was cheap, but because he believed we were building something together, and I wasn't there anymore. One night, Mauro gave me a list. We need at least $10,000 to start. Just for the permits, the down payment on the space, and the first basic equipment. $10,000. A ridiculous figure compared to what Sebastian had already put in. $90,000. That's what he invested from the beginning. And he trusted me so much that he didn't even check the accounts. He just told me, do what you think is best. So, I started to. First, it was minimal movements, buying spare parts, restocking. I used edited invoices that Mauro gave me. I redirected the funds little by little to an alternate account we opened together. My hands were shaking the first time, not so much the second. The third time I didn't even feel it. Every time I made a transfer, I remembered Sebastian's smile. I imagined him hugging his papers, writing new ideas in the notebook he gave me, not knowing that I was dismantling his dream from within. I told myself it wasn't a theft, it was a parallel investment, a loan with a cause. He wouldn't even notice it was missing. He was already too focused on efficiency to see that the soul of the project was gone. The last night before I left was like a cruel scene from a movie. Sebastian hugged me from behind as we were closing the cash register. He told me he felt something was wrong, that he noticed I was distant, that if something was happening we could talk about it. I had the courage or the cowardice to tell him everything was fine, that I was just stressed. He looked at me with those same eyes, warm, soft, trusting. He kissed my forehead. We're going to be okay, I promise. The next day, while he was in a meeting with an accountant, I transferred everything that was left in the joint account. I liquidated inventory. I sold some machines on the side. A couple of suppliers asked me why the rush. I smiled. We're about to grow. It's a new beginning. I lied with a smoothness that still makes me ashamed. Mauro was waiting for me at a bus station with 2 backpacks and a crooked smile. We got on without looking back. We went to another city where, according to him, everything was easier, more flexible, freer. We spent the first few days between laughs and specialty coffees. We planned menus, checked out empty spaces, made lists of materials. I felt like I was finally fulfilling what I always wanted, to create something of my own with someone who saw me as a leader, not an assistant. One night, as we were toasting with cheap wine glasses, Mauro said, "You know, you're braver than I thought. Stealing from your boyfriend? Not everyone can do that."
I felt a knot in my chest.
Not because of the words, but because of the way he said it, without guilt, as if it were a masterstroke. I laughed to hide it, but I didn't sleep well that night. And it was there, with my head buried in the pillow of a new mattress in a city I didn't know, that I heard that word again in my head. Later, I'll make it up to him later. He'll forgive me later, later, later. It never came. What did come was reality. At first, everything seemed to be going well. We got a small space in a promising area. According to Mauro, we rented it in my name because he had pending tax issues. I didn't ask. I didn't want to ruin the fantasy. We decorated with second-hand furniture that we passed off as rustic minimalist. We bought used equipment. The first few weeks we opened with a reduced menu and high expectations, but the customers didn't come. Mauro said it was a matter of time, that the neighborhood needed to get used to us, that organic marketing takes longer than it seems, but in the meantime, the days passed, the bills mounted, and the money dwindled. I, unwilling to accept it, started covering expenses with cards in my name. I took out small loans, then larger ones. Mauro kept projecting, but he didn't put in a single cent. One night, while I was cleaning the bar, I found a receipt. It wasn't from the business, it was from an appliance store, a new TV, a sound system, something else. I checked the movements of the alternate account where we had kept part of the stolen capital. Almost all of it was gone. When I confronted him, he looked at me without even blinking. "I have a right to enjoy myself, too. Not with my money, with your money." He laughed. "And where exactly did that money come from?" I stayed silent. The poison was already inside. I couldn't argue without incriminating myself. He knew it. A few days later, the delays in supplier payments began, then the power cuts. A customer complained because he found mold on a cookie. Another because the coffee was cold. The negative reviews started piling up on Google. Morrow, increasingly absent, would show up late and leave early. He spoke to me with condescension. He touched me less, he listened to me less. One day, while he was on the phone, I heard him tell someone, "Yeah, it's collapsing. I'm just waiting for her to sign the transfer so I can get out of here." My soul dropped to the floor. That night, I went to the shop with a copy of his keys. I checked his personal drawer. I found papers, documents with signatures that weren't mine, credit applications in my name, receipts for appliances sent to an unknown address. Camila's address. Yes, Camila, my friend, the same one who introduced me to Morrow. I looked up her profile.
Pictures of both of them at the beach.
Dated while he was living with me. Comments like, "Thanks for making our dream come true." My world fell apart again. I thought about calling Sebastian. I thought about telling him everything, asking for help, advice, something. But how could I look him in the eye? I no longer had a home, a partner, or a business. I had a growing debt, a broken reputation, and the certainty that I had ruined my life for two people who didn't even pretend to love me for very long. A few days later, Morrow disappeared. He took the equipment that was left. I stopped seeing him. He left me a curt message. "Don't insist. I'm keeping what belongs to me.
Goodbye."
I had only one option left, to try to save the business by myself. I started sleeping in the shop on a mattress between bags of coffee and cardboard boxes. I served the few customers with a fake smile. I answered negative reviews as best I could. I fought to keep the place alive while inside me everything was already dead. Until one day the owner of the space came to collect the overdue rent. I had no way to pay. That night I closed for the last time. I sat on the sidewalk with my elbows on my knees, looking at the sign. I had hung myself, and I laughed. Not out of joy, but out of madness, out of disgust, out of desperation. I took out my phone and wrote a message. "I'm sorry. I don't know if you hate me, but I needed to say it. I'm sorry, Sebastian." I received no reply. Not that day, not the next, not an emoji, not a word, not a reaction. The message was left on read, as if I had sent my soul to a bottomless mailbox. I returned to the city 2 weeks after closing the business. Not because I wanted to, not out of courage, but out of necessity. I had one change of clothes, a debt of over $50,000, and an anxiety that made me vomit if I ate more than twice a day. The only option was to face the consequences. I rented a room in a shared house that smelled of damp and had constant shouting in the hallway. I started working washing dishes in a cheap diner. I'd get up before dawn and come back at night with chapped hands and a head full of kitchen smoke. One afternoon, upon arriving at my room, I found an envelope on the floor with my name handwritten on it. Inside was a legal notice. Sebastian was suing me. Not for revenge, not out of spite, but for fraud, embezzlement, and financial damages. I was in shock, not because of the fact, but because of the sheer coldness. He was always direct, but never cruel. On the day of the conciliation hearing, I arrived in borrowed pants and a blouse I had ironed on the bed with the palm of my hand. I had my hair up, cheap makeup to cover the dark circles, and a shattered heart. When I saw him, I almost didn't recognize him. He was thinner, more serious, but firm. He was dressed elegantly, effortlessly.
His eyes were dry.
His gaze no longer sought answers, only justice. We sat across from each other. I felt like I was going to faint. His lawyer started talking. I wasn't listening to him, I was only looking at Sebastian. At some point, he turned his head towards me, and it was like looking at a stranger. "Do you have anything to say?" his lawyer asked. I took a breath. "I can't pay it all back," I said, "but I'm trying. I'm working. And I'm sorry. I don't know if it matters at this point, but I'm truly sorry." Silence. "That's all," Sebastian said without looking at me directly. "I loved you," I whispered. "I made a mistake, but I loved you." He looked at me for the first time since we arrived. Not with anger, not even with sadness, just with emptiness. "What you did wasn't a mistake, it was a choice." One after another. I didn't know what to reply. I just looked down. After a long negotiation, he accepted a partial settlement. I would sell the shop. It was still legally in my name, and whatever I got would go to him. It wouldn't cover everything, but it would be a start. When we signed the papers, my hands were shaking. He just took the pen and did it without hesitation. At the end of the meeting, I gathered my courage. Can we talk?
Someday.
Just that. No, he replied without thinking. There's nothing more to say. I got up and, before leaving, I turned around one last time. Do you hate me?
He thought about it.
Just for a few seconds. No. And that was worse than a yes. That night I sold what little I had left of the shop. They gave me less than half of what it was worth. I handed over everything I got. Not a cent was left for me. I returned to my room with an empty box and a new feeling. I already knew contempt, but being forgotten hurts more. I needed more. More than silence. More than indifference. I needed a word, a sign, something to tell me that there was still a piece of him that remembered me, that I hadn't completely become a shadow that vanished with a betrayal. So, like an idiot, I wrote to him again, not once, not twice. Every week, since we signed the settlement, I sent him a message. I started with the formal ones. Thank you for accepting the agreement. Then, the personal ones. I just wanted to know if you're okay. Then, the vulnerable ones. It still hurts me that I didn't look at you properly when I should have. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. Really. One morning, with a broken voice and buried dignity, I sent him an audio message. I don't know if you hate me, or if you just want to erase me, but I can't do this anymore. I can't stop thinking about you. I know I ruined everything, that I deserve your silence, but if you ever, even for a second, loved me, please answer me. Not with love, with something, with anything. He listened to it and blocked me. Just like that, without words, without a reply, without anger. Just eternal silence. I stared at the screen with the gray, user not available, icon as if it were a tomb, because that's what it was, a digital death that closed the only channel that still connected me to him. The days passed. I went back to work washing glasses, cleaning bathrooms, serving customers who spoke to me without seeing me. I walked through gray streets with a backpack on my shoulder and a list of mistakes tattooed on my back. One rainy Sunday, I passed by Sebastian's new shop. I hadn't planned it. It was a coincidence. Or a punishment. It was beautiful. A minimalist facade, huge windows, hanging plants, warm lights, a sign that said, "Welcome home." There were people laughing inside, children running, baristas with personalized aprons, and there he was, serving coffee, smiling, talking to a customer as if the world had never disappointed him. Next to him, a woman, not Camila, another one, maybe his partner, maybe something more. It was hard to tell, but when she touched his hand and he didn't pull away, I knew. I stood there in the rain, soaked, invisible. Nobody saw me. Neither did he. I don't know if he pretended not to, or if he really didn't recognize me. At that moment, it didn't matter. I kept walking with my shoes full of water, my stomach empty, and my throat tight. That night I looked at myself in the mirror of my rented room. My face was swollen, my eyes were red, my soul was broken. And I asked myself what I ask myself every day since I lost him. Do I really deserve this? Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I'm living it anyway. And the worst part is that I can't even hate him for leaving me like this, because after everything I did to him, it was the most dignified thing he could do. He did what he had to do, he left me behind, he forgot me, he blocked me from his life as if I were emotional spam. He didn't insult me, he didn't yell at me, he didn't wish me ill, he just deleted me. And that was worse than hate. Since then, every day is a dull repetition of the last. I wake up on an inflatable mattress that no longer holds air well. The room has damp on the walls, the windows don't close properly, and the neighbor's shouts pierce through like thin knives. I have instant coffee for breakfast, which I steal from the restaurant. Sometimes they give me leftovers. Other times they just don't. I work 10 hours washing dishes, listening to orders and my name. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody wants to know. And if they did, they might spit on me instead of giving me a tip. My friends disappeared, even the ones who helped me destroy my life. Camila went to another country with Mauro, or so I heard. They posted a picture in Paris. He was holding a coffee and she was holding a ring. I don't know if it was bought with part of the money I stole. I didn't want to look anymore. I tried to contact one of the others. I just asked her to lend me a little to pay for the gas. She blocked me, without even reading the full message. There's no social network that welcomes me without reminding me that everyone has moved on. Sebastian now has a chain of coffee shops. I saw a report on an entrepreneur's page. They called him an example of resilience and young leadership. I saw him on the cover. He was smiling and I hated him for a moment. Not for his success, but for being able to be happy without me. I ruined everything. Yes, but why was I left in ruins and he wasn't? That's the question that echoes in my head every night. Why was I the only one left behind? I hurt myself. I got into even more debt with informal loans. I started working extra as a cleaning assistant in the early mornings. I lost weight. I lost hair. I lost the will to live. I went to the hospital once for fainting. The doctor asked if I lived alone. I said yes. She asked if I had anyone who could take care of me. I laughed and cried. I cried in front of a stranger because I no longer even had the strength to pretend. One night, I tried to write a letter to Sebastian. Not to ask for forgiveness, not to beg for love, just to tell him that I'm still alive, that I haven't forgotten his look the day he told me, "You dug this grave yourself." But I didn't send it because I know he doesn't care, and because now I don't know if I want him to remember me like this either. A year passed. I spent my birthday alone. Nobody called, nobody wrote, not even my mother. They gave me a bag of stale bread at the restaurant. A cook told me, "You look calmer lately." And I hated him for that too. No, I'm not calm. I'm empty. And when you have nothing inside, nobody can tell if you're okay or not. Today I looked at my reflection in the bus window. I didn't recognize myself, and I finally understood the true ruin. It's not the lack of money or the punishment of others. It's losing your identity. It's when there's not even a part of you left that wants to be saved. Sebastian did it, Camila did it, Mauro did it. Story 2. I humiliated my crying teenage daughter at a family dinner to make her tougher. Then an old recording exposed me admitting I wanted to break her and rebuild her my way. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. My name's Patricia, I'm 49 years old, and if you ask me, I'll say that motherhood isn't a popularity contest, it's a survival mission. I grew up in a house where affection was earned with results and where weakness was punished with the coldest contempt you can imagine. My father used to say that the world is a place full of wolves waiting for a sheep to stray from the flock. And my job, my only true job as a mother, was to make sure that Elena, my 17-year-old daughter, was not a sheep. I always saw her as too soft. Since she was little, Elena was the kind of girl who cried if a bird fell from its nest, the kind who got distressed if a friend didn't greet her at recess. I saw that sensitivity not as a virtue, but as a crack in her armor, an open invitation for life to shatter her. That's why I was hard. That's why I am hard, because I'd rather have her hate me for making her strong than have the world devour her for being weak. That Sunday, the family gathering at my sister Sophia's house seemed like the perfect stage for one of those lessons no one forgets. We had arrived early. Elena had spent the morning in front of the mirror. I saw her try on 3 different dresses, straighten her hair until it was burnt, and put on makeup with a precision that seemed ridiculous to me for a simple lunch with aunts, uncles, and cousins. When she came down the stairs, I looked at her. I didn't say, "You look beautiful," because vanity is the first step towards insecurity. I said, "Are you really going to go like that? It looks like you tried too hard for people who've seen you in diapers." I saw the sparkle die in her eyes, that little flash of teenage pride that vanished in a second. She didn't answer, just lowered her head and walked to the car. At that moment, I thought I had done the right thing. Someone had to bring her down to earth. The car ride was silent. I drove, mentally reviewing my own work worries, the debts, the need to maintain an image of total control. Elena looked out the window, lost in her own thoughts. I wanted to tell her to sit up straight, not to slouch, but I saved the comment for later. When we arrived at Sophia's house, the atmosphere was festive. There was Raoul, my brother-in-law, grilling meat in the backyard, my nephews running around, and Yvonne, my 28-year-old cousin, who was always glued to his phone but had a sharp ear for everything happening around him. We sat at the table. Food circulated amidst laughter and repeated anecdotes. Elena was sitting across from me. I noticed she was uncomfortable, constantly touching her hair, looking at her reflection in the spoon, seeking approval in the gazes of others. Sophia, who has always been the doting aunt, told her, "Elena, that lipstick color looks so pretty on you." Elena smiled, a shy, grateful smile, and that's where I felt the irritation rise in my throat like acid. That need for external validation, that dependence on others' praise, seemed pathetic to me. It seemed dangerous. If you depend on being told you're pretty to feel good, what happens when they tell you you're ugly? You collapse. And I couldn't allow my daughter to be a building without foundations. Don't get her used to empty praise, Sophia. I snapped, cutting off my sister's laughter. If she believes all the good things they tell her, she'll also believe the bad. Elena, that lipstick is too intense for your skin tone. It makes you look pale, like you're sick. A sudden silence fell over the table. It wasn't a calm silence. It was a sudden void, like when the power goes out in the middle of a storm. Elena looked at me, her large, expressive eyes filled with water in a matter of seconds. She tried to blink it back. She tried to smile as if she didn't care, but her chin trembled. That sign, that little tremor, was the trigger. Instead of feeling compassion, I felt a cold surge. She was going to cry over a comment about a lipstick at 17? It was ridiculous. It was unacceptable. "Please, don't tell me you're going to cry," I said, raising my voice just enough for everyone at the table, even those at the far end, to hear me. "It's unbelievable. You're almost 18 and you fall apart because your mother gives you an honest opinion. Do you think your future boss is going to care about your feelings? Do you think life is going to ask for your permission before it hits you?" Elena dropped her fork. The sound of metal against porcelain sounded like a gunshot. A tear rolled down her cheek, smudging a little of her makeup. She put her hand to her face, ashamed, trying to hide, but I didn't let her hide. Exposure is the best teacher, I thought. If she feels humiliated now, she'll learn not to be so fragile next time. "Look at yourself," I continued, pointing at her with my own fork. "You're making a scene. All because you can't handle reality. You have to toughen up, Elena. You have to stop being so permeable. People will eat you alive if you keep this up." Sophia tried to intervene. "Patricia, that's enough," she said in a low voice, putting a hand on the table. "Leave her alone." "No, I won't leave her alone because you're not going to support her when she breaks into pieces over some silly thing," I retorted without looking at my sister, keeping my eyes fixed on my daughter. "She needs to hear this. She needs to know that her insecure posture, that way of walking as if apologizing for existing, and that hypersensitivity are flaws. They are, and if I don't get them out of her, no one will." Elena was sobbing now, but silently. That choked crying that makes the body shake. To me, at that moment, it wasn't pain, it was manipulation. It was her way of saying, "Mom, stop. I'm a victim, and I don't negotiate with victims." I continued my dissection. I wasn't shouting, and I want that to be clear. Shouting is for those who lose control. I was in full command of my faculties, speaking with the calm of a surgeon removing a tumor. I listed, one by one, the behaviors I found unacceptable. I told her about how her voice trembled when she had to ask for something in a store. I reminded her of the time she quit a sports team because the coach yelled at her once. I threw in her face that her need to please everyone made her a person without a backbone. "The world doesn't respect those who cry, Elena. The world uses them," I sentenced. "If you want to cry, go to the bathroom, but at this table, we eat with dignity." Raoul, my brother-in-law, looked down at his plate. He was a big man, the kind who avoids conflict at all costs. And seeing his discomfort gave me a strange sense of validation. I thought he agreed with me, that his silence was a tacit nod that someone had to bring order. Sophia had stopped eating, her fork suspended in midair, looking at me with a mixture of disbelief and horror, but I didn't care about her judgment. She raised her children in cotton wool. I was raising a warrior, even if I had to forge her with blows of reality. Elena stood up from her chair. She did it abruptly, almost knocking over her water glass. She didn't say anything. She didn't look at me. She turned and walked quickly towards the inside of the house, presumably towards the guest bathroom. Her footsteps echoed in the hallway, and then we heard the slam of the door. The sound of the lock turning was the final punctuation mark of the scene. I leaned back in my chair, took my napkin, and wiped the corners of my lips. I felt a sudden calm, that peace that comes after having said what one believes to be the absolute truth. I looked around, expecting the conversation to resume, for someone to say something trivial about the weather or the barbecue to break the ice. But no one spoke. The silence became thick, sticky. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen and the sound of a car passing far away on the street. "Well," I said, breaking the silence with a casual tone. "Does anyone want more salad?" Sophia looked at me intently. Her eyes were dark. "Patricia, do you realize what you've just done?" she asked, her voice trembling with contained anger. "I'm educating her, Sophia. Something you might want to try with your own from time to time," I replied, pouring myself some water with complete tranquility. I'd rather she cry here with me than cry alone outside when life really hits her. Hardship builds character. Pain teaches. It's simple. "That's not education," Raoul muttered without looking up from his plate. "That was cruel." "Cruelty is lying to her," I immediately counterattacked. "Telling her everything she does is perfect is cruel. I love her enough to be the villain in the movie. She'll thank me when she's 30 and a successful woman who doesn't let anyone walk all over her." I kept justifying myself. The words flowed easily because they were a script I had repeated to myself for years. Every time I saw Elena suffer, I told myself it was necessary to toughen her up. Every time I suppressed a hug to give a criticism, I convinced myself it was for her own good. I was so engrossed in my speech, so sure of my airtight logic, that I didn't notice what Yvonne was doing. My cousin was on the other side of the table with his phone in his hand. He wasn't texting or checking social media. He was looking at us, alternating his gaze between Sophia and me. His expression was indecipherable. Yvonne had always been the family's observer, the one who recorded birthdays, the one who kept the old photos. I never thought his personal archive could be a weapon. "Do you really believe that, Patricia?" Yvonne asked. His voice was calm, almost bored, which made his intervention more unsettling. "Of course I believe it. It's my philosophy," I replied, looking at him haughtily. "Do you have any objection, Yvonne? You don't have children, so I don't think you understand the responsibility." "No, I don't have children," he admitted, swiping his finger across his phone screen. "But I have a good memory and I have backups. I was looking for a video of Grandma's birthday from 3 years ago, and I came across this. I think we need to listen to it before you continue talking about building character." He put the phone in the center of the table, between the platter of meat and the salad bowl. The volume was at maximum. We all looked at the black device as if it were a time bomb, and then he pressed play. What came out of the speaker was not music or ambient noise. It was my voice, my own voice, clear, crisp, cutting. But it wasn't the voice I heard in my head. That reasonable, logical voice was a voice full of contempt. "When she cries, she manipulates. It's that simple. If I give in, I make her weak. Sometimes I think she does it on purpose to embarrass me, but I'm not going to let her win. I have to break her to put her back together, right?" The recording stopped. The echo of my words, "break her to put her back together," hung in the stale air of the dining room. I didn't remember saying that. Or maybe I didn't remember saying it with such coldness. It was an old conversation, probably with my mother before she passed away, or maybe with a friend over the phone. Yvonne must have been recording some casual video in the background and capture my conversation. I looked up. Sophia had her hands covering her mouth. Raoul was looking at me with an expression I can only describe as disgust. I felt the blood drain from my face. Not from regret. Not yet, but from the nakedness. They had taken off my mask of a concerned mother and exposed the bony structure of my rigidity. "Break her," Sophia whispered. "That's your plan, to break your own daughter?" I was angry at that moment. I stammered, losing my composure for the first time. That's old. Taken out of context. The context seems to be the same as today, Yvonne said, putting his phone back in his pocket. You've been doing this for years, Patricia. Today was just more public. The tension at the table ceased to be an abstract concept and became a physical barrier. I could feel my family's stares piercing my skin, judging not just today's incident, but every decision I had made in the last 17 years. I tried to regain control, that tool that had always served me to navigate crises. I straightened up in my chair, took a breath, and looked for a logical way out. You don't understand, I said, though my voice sounded less firm. It's very easy to judge from the outside. You don't see how difficult it is to raise someone who breaks with the wind. I'm trying to protect her. That audio was a moment of frustration. All parents get frustrated. Frustration is one thing, Patricia. Contempt is another, Raoul intervened. And this time his voice had an authoritative weight he rarely showed. You just humiliated her in front of the whole family, and now we hear that your philosophy is to break her. That's not love. That's abuse disguised as discipline. The word abuse hit me like a slap. I stood up from my chair abruptly. How dare you? My daughter lacks nothing. She has a roof over her head, food, education, clothes. I work myself to the bone for her. Abuse? Abuse is what I lived through with my father, who would ignore me for weeks if I got a bad grade. I'm present, I correct her. You correct her by destroying her, Sophia said with tears in her eyes. Patricia, Elena is afraid of you. Don't you realize? She doesn't respect you. She fears you. When you enter a room, she shrinks. I've been seeing it for years and keeping quiet to respect your parenting, but today you crossed a line. I wanted to scream at them, to tell them they were soft, that their children would be failures, incapable of tolerating frustration. But something in Yvonne's gaze stopped me. He wasn't angry, he was disappointed, and that disappointment hurt more than the anger. I felt cornered. My mind frantically searched for memories that would validate my stance, moments when my toughness had saved Elena. I remembered when I forced her to go back to swimming class despite her fear of water, and how she learned to swim. See, I thought it worked. But then I remembered she never wanted to go into a pool for fun again. I remembered when I criticized her writing until she made it perfect, and she won a school competition. It worked, I told myself. But I remembered she tore up the diploma and never wanted to write stories again. Suddenly, a cold doubt settled in my stomach. What if they were right? What if the price of success was her soul? I shook my head, rejecting the idea. I couldn't afford to doubt now. If I doubted, the entire edifice of my motherhood would collapse. Someone, I think it was one of Sophia's children, tried to go to the bathroom. He came back to the table seconds later. Aunt, the door is locked. Elena's not answering, the boy said. Sophia stood up immediately and ran to the hallway. I stood still for a second, paralyzed by a mixture of pride and panic. Then I followed her. Raoul and Yvonne were behind me. Sophia knocked on the door gently. Elena, honey, it's Aunt Sophia. Please open up. Silence. Elena, daughter, come out. It's over, I said, trying to sound authoritative but calm. Don't make this bigger than it is. From inside, there was no sound. No crying, no movement, nothing. I put my ear to the door. The silence was absolute. A terrible thought crossed my mind. What if she had done something to herself?
No.
Elena wasn't like that. She was dramatic, but not suicidal. Or was she? How well did I really know my daughter beyond her flaws? Elena, open the door right now. I ordered, knocking harder. Panic was starting to seep into my voice, breaking my iron general facade. Elena, leave her, Patricia. Sophia pushed me, moving me away from the door with a strength I didn't know she had. If she's not opening, it's because she doesn't want to see you. Raoul, find the master key. I stood there, pushed against the hallway wall, watching my family mobilize to rescue my daughter from me. I felt like an intruder, like a monster that had burst into a happy home. I remembered the audio again. If I give in, I make her weak. At that moment, standing in the hallway, I wished with all my might to be weak. I wished I could cry and ask for forgiveness, but I didn't know how. Years of toughening myself up had left me dry. Raoul returned with a set of keys. He tried one, two, the third one turned. The click of the lock sounded like a gunshot in the silent hallway. Sophia opened the door slowly. We all held our breath. I expected to find her on the floor, or cut, or fainted. Imagination is the worst enemy of guilt. But Elena wasn't on the floor. She was sitting on the edge of the bathtub, her hands in her lap, staring at the tiles on the opposite wall. She wasn't crying, not anymore. Her face was washed, red from the effort of holding back. But her eyes were dry, terribly dry. She looked up and looked at us. Her gaze passed over Sophia, over Raoul, over Yvonne, and finally rested on me. There was no hatred in her eyes, no plea. There was something much worse. Absence. She looked at me as if I were a piece of furniture, an inanimate object in the way in the doorway. "I'm coming out now," she said. Her voice was flat, monotone, without emotion. I realized then that my wish had come true. She had stopped crying. She had toughened up. But seeing her empty eyes, I understood that I hadn't created a fortress. I had created a desert. Elena came out of the bathroom, walking with a stiffness I had always demanded of her, but which now seemed unnatural, almost robotic. She passed by me without stopping, without even brushing against me. The space between us, though physically only a few inches, emotionally felt like an insurmountable abyss. "I want to leave," she said, addressing Sophia, not me. "I'll take you," Sophia replied immediately, looking for her car keys in her pocket. "Raoul, stay with the kids." "No, I'll take her. She's my daughter," I intervened, stepping forward. I tried to regain my position of authority, but it sounded hollow. "Elena, let's go to the car. We need to talk at home." Elena stopped at her tracks. She didn't turn to look at me. She just spoke with her back to the hallway where I was still standing. "I'm not getting in a car with you, Mom. Not today." It was the first time in her life she had openly defied me in front of others. In the past, I would have exploded. I would have forced her to obey, dragging her if necessary, to show who was in charge. But the weight of Yvonne's audio, the judgmental looks from my sister and brother-in-law, and above all, that new and terrifying coldness in Elena's voice, paralyzed me. "Okay," I said. And my voice came out strangled. "Go with your aunt. I'll wait for you at home." Sophia and Elena left. I heard the front door close and the engine of my sister's car drive away. I was left alone in the hallway with Raoul and Yvonne. Raoul sighed, a long, tired sound, and went back to the dining room to clear the plates. Yvonne stayed a moment longer, looking at me. "Grandma's video is very beautiful, by the way," Yvonne said softly. "Too bad that audio was at the end. You should listen to yourself more often, Patricia. Sometimes we don't realize how we sound until it's too late." And he left. The drive back to my house was the longest of my life. I drove on autopilot, but my mind was in a frantic loop. It went from justification, she's a dramatic teenager, Sophia spoils her, I did what I had to do, to a corrosive guilt that burned my stomach. I remembered my own childhood. I remembered my father yelling at me because I cried when my dog died. "Don't be useless, Patricia. The dead don't come back for your tears." I remembered how I swallowed that pain, how I turned it into a hard stone in my chest, and how that stone had helped me survive layoffs, divorces, and loneliness. I wanted to give that stone to Elena. I wanted to give her my shield. Why didn't anyone understand it was a gift? I got home and found it empty. The silence was different from the one in my sister's dining room. This was a definitive silence. I sat on the couch without turning on the light, waiting. Hours passed. It got dark. Around 10 at night, Sophia's car pulled up outside. I saw the lights sweep across the living room through the window. Elena got out, came into the house, and closed the door. I was sitting in the dark. "Elena," I said. She jumped, but recovered quickly. "Good night," she said, and headed for the stairs. "Elena, we need to talk. About today." I started getting up. "There's nothing to talk about," She cut me off. She turned on the first step. The light from the upstairs hallway illuminated her face from above, creating harsh shadows under her eyes. You wanted me to stop crying? Well, I stopped. You win. Congratulations. It's not about winning or losing, daughter. It's about you understanding that the world. I tried to launch into my usual speech, but the words got stuck. The world hasn't done anything to me, Mom, she said with a voice so calm it chilled my blood. The only person who makes me feel small, useless, and ridiculous is you. You are the hostile world you talk so much about. You are the wolf. She went up the stairs. I heard her door close. There was no slam, just a soft, definitive click. I stood there in the dark living room. The phrase echoed in my head. You are the wolf. I always thought I was the sheepdog, nipping at the sheep's heels to keep it safe. But if the sheep is more afraid of the shepherd than the wolf, then the shepherd has failed in every way. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I saw a 49-year-old woman alone, with a daughter who looked at her like an enemy. I thought about the audio. If I give in, I make her weak. That night, for the first time in decades, I felt that the definition of weakness that had sustained me my whole life was wrong. Maybe weakness wasn't crying. Maybe weakness was being unable to love without hurting. I sat at the kitchen table and put my head in my hands. I wanted to cry. I wanted to release that pressure I had in my chest since my father yelled at me for my dead dog 40 years ago, but I couldn't. My eyes were dry. I had trained myself too well. I was an impregnable fortress, yes, but I was empty inside. 3 weeks have passed since the family gathering. Life at home has changed, but not in the explosive way you'd expect in a movie. There are no shouts, no fights, no slamming doors. There's a tense calm, an artificial peace that is 1,000 times worse than any conflict. Elena still lives here.
She eats with me.
She says hello when she comes home from school. She answers if I ask if she needs money or if I hear a uniform voice, but she's gone. The girl who used to try to tell me her dreams, who would show me her drawings, who sometimes, even though I rejected it, would seek a hug. She's no longer here. Now I have a polite and efficient tenant in the house. She applies what I read online is called gray rocking. She responds with monosyllables, shows no emotion, shares nothing personal. She has become impermeable, just as I wanted. The other day, I tried to break the ice. I made her favorite breakfast. When she saw it, she thanked me with that cold courtesy and ate it while looking at her cell phone. Elena, about what Uncle Ivan said, I began, feeling a lump in my throat. It doesn't matter, Mom. You were right, she interrupted without looking up. Crying is useless. I get it now. It won't happen again. Her words should have made me feel victorious. It was what I had repeated to her 1,000 times, but hearing it from her mouth, in that dead tone, broke my heart in a way I didn't know was possible. She wasn't saying it because she had matured, she was saying it because she had given up on me. She had accepted that she couldn't expect empathy from me, so she had stopped looking for it. My relationship with my family has also fractured. Sophia calls me infrequently, and our conversations are brief, purely logistical, about the care of our elderly parents. Raoul greets me with a distant courtesy. Ivan hasn't spoken to me again, and honestly, I don't know if I want him to. Every time I think of him, I hear my own voice in that cursed audio. I've tried to justify myself 1,000 times in my head. I tell myself that the world is still tough, that she'll thank me for this armor one day. But then I pass by her room and hear her laughing while talking on the phone with her friends or with Sophia. A genuine, free laugh. And as soon as I enter, the laughter stops as if a switch has been flipped. That's my reality now. I am the killer of her joy. I've thought about apologizing to her. I've rehearsed the words in front of the mirror. I'm sorry for exposing you. I'm sorry for being hard. But every time I'm about to say it, fear paralyzes me. The fear that she'll use my apology to manipulate me. The fear of losing my authority. The fear of admitting that my father was wrong and that I have perpetuated his mistake. It's my pride, I know. That pride I confuse with dignity. Last night, I found an old photo of Elena when she was 5. She was crying because her ice cream had fallen. In the photo, I'm looking at her with my arms crossed, waiting for the tantrum to end. I'm not comforting her. I'm judging her. I've been judging her for 14 years instead of loving her. And now that I've achieved my goal, now that she doesn't cry in front of me, I realize the magnitude of my loss. I wanted to toughen her up for the world, so no one could hurt her. I succeeded. She's tough. But the first person she has used that toughness against is me. I've built a perfect soldier who has raised an unbreachable wall around her heart, and I've been left outside. The silence in this house is deafening, and the worst part is that I know it's a silence I demanded myself. I asked for no tears, no drama, for control. Here is the control. Perfect, cold, and lonely. Now I ask you, and I know the answer is going to hurt, but I need to read it. Am I the bad guy for trying to prepare her for reality, or was the price I paid too high? The silence that remained teaches nothing. It just weighs, and it weighs a ton. Popular comments. Anonymous comment 1, white yay. What you did wasn't parenting, it was public psychological torture. Congratulations, you've earned a nursing home where no one will visit you. OP's response. I understand now. The loneliness I feel at home is a preview of that future you mention, and it hurts. Anonymous comment 2, white yay. The audio made it clear. Your goal wasn't to educate, it was to win and subdue. You're an abuser with delusions of being a teacher. OP's response. I heard myself differently in that recording. I thought it was firmness, but it sounded like hatred. It's hard to digest. Anonymous comment 3. Yes, H. You're the worst. No doubt, but your family allowed this for 17 years. Yvonne should have spoken up sooner. Not wait for an audience. OP's response. Yes. Maybe if someone had stopped me sooner, we wouldn't have reached this point of no return. Anonymous comment 4. White yay. Crying is not manipulation, it's a human response. You've taught your daughter that her emotions are garbage. OP's response. I'm learning late that emotions can't be excised without killing a part of the person. Anonymous comment 5. White yay. You broke her in front of everyone, and you're surprised she doesn't talk to you. You've created a soldier who sees you as the enemy. OP's response. It hurts to read, but it's exactly what she told me, that I am the wolf. Anonymous comment 6. Yes, H. No one defended her in time. Your sister and brother-in-law only reacted when it became a public scandal. Poor girl. OP's response. It's true. We all failed, but I was the one who pulled the trigger. Anonymous comment 7. White yay. That's not something you forget. You can apologize 1,000 times, but public humiliation leaves a permanent scar. OP's response. I know. I see that scar every time she looks at me with those empty eyes. Anonymous comment 8. Yes, H. The limit came too late. Your daughter has already learned to disconnect from you to survive. Don't expect to regain trust anytime soon. OP's response. Too late. I think the trust was broken long before that dinner. Anonymous comment 9. White yay. Trust doesn't come back the same. You've traded a mother-daughter relationship for a cohabitation of strangers. OP's response. No, it doesn't come back. We live together, but we're miles apart. Anonymous comment 10. Yes, H. Everyone carries something now. You, the guilt, she, the trauma, and the family, the shame of having been accomplices with their silence. OP's response. Yes. The family gathering was the funeral of our normalcy.